Hi, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. We're in Matthew chapter 27, the very last verses of this chapter leading into chapter 28, where the resurrection morning is accounted for. We've just studied the burial of Jesus and Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus's act of defiance to their fellow Pharisees and Sadducees. Now, while Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, that's the mother of James and Joseph, according to verse 56, they watch the tomb be closed. And then here's verse 62. The next day, which followed the preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, we remember that while this deceiver was still alive, he said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give orders that the tomb be made secure until the third day. Otherwise his disciples may come, steal him, and tell the people he has been raised from the dead, and the last deception will be worse than the first." "You have a guard of soldiers," Pilate told them. "Go and make it as secure as you know how." They went and secured the tomb by setting a seal on the stone and placing the guard. This is actually a rumor that persists today, that the body was stolen. In fact, when you get to chapter 28 and verse 11, as they were on their way, some of the guards came into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened, talking about the resurrection of Jesus. After the priests had assembled with the elders and agreed on a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money and told them, "Say this, his disciples came during the night and stole him while we were sleeping. If this reaches the governor's ears, we will deal with him and keep you out of trouble." They took the money and did as they were instructed, and this story has been spread among the Jewish people to this day. Those words, "to this day," usually just refer to at the author's time of writing. But in this case, it literally does persist to this day. I'm currently recording this in the year 2023, and the theory of the body snatchers remains a theory as to what actually happened to the body of Jesus. These guys, these soldiers, were placed there under threat of death if they abandoned their post or if they fell asleep. They were bribed to lie and say that they fell asleep. That way, they could account for why the tomb was empty. If they had the body of Jesus, they would have paraded it down the streets. It would still be on display today. They wanted nothing more than to stop this rumor from spreading. They remembered what Jesus had taught. Matthew chapter 12, verses 38 through 40. Remember us describing the sign of Jonah? Then some of the scribes and Pharisees, this is Matthew 12, 38. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees said to him, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you." This is fatuous because he had already performed numerous signs. He answered them, "An evil and adulterous generation demands a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was in the belly of the huge fish 3 days and 3 nights, so the Son of Man will be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. I don't believe the heart of the earth means hell. This is why the Apostles' Creed was actually revised. It's the heart of the earth because it's Joseph of Arimathea's tomb, which was etched into the stone. See verse 60, placed in his new tomb, which he had cut into the rock. Joseph of Arimathea had a large tomb etched out of stone so that his family could be buried there. That was an incredible cost to him. And so when we sing about him being buried in a borrowed grave, that's what we're talking about. It was borrowed from the family of Joseph of Arimathea. But guess what? One of those spots became available again. Arimathea family, you're Joseph's family, like you guys are in luck because some space just opened up in your tomb. This seal, this wax seal, bared a distinctive mark that could not be forged. And if that's ever broken, whoever breaks it is put to death. That these soldiers would be bribed was because they would bear this shame all their lives. And that they would be protected from the governor meant the governor is going to have you put to death for having broken the seal, having fallen asleep on such an important job. And so basically you're going to bear this stigma forever, but we're going to pay you. That rumor persists to this day. They remembered what Jesus had said. So they gave orders to make sure that it was secure. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal him and tell the people he's been raised from the dead, and the last deception will be worse than the first. Here's what's remarkable about the scattering of the disciples. Do you remember when Jesus in the Last Supper quoted Zechariah and talked about the striking of the shepherd and the scattering of the sheep? And then we saw in the night leading up to the crucifixion how the disciples all did indeed scatter. They were stricken with grief. We saw that in cross-referencing Luke while we studied Jesus' prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. They had all talked a big game at following Peter's lead against Jesus' insistence and rightful prophesying. They all said, no, we'll die before we abandon you. That they did abandon him indicated their lack of belief in the resurrection. I mean, even, carry out the whole gospel narrative, they needed a lot of convincing. In fact, some of them, even post-resurrection, didn't actually get saved until the final chapter of Matthew. Some of these guys still didn't believe even after the resurrection. So they didn't believe that the resurrection was coming. They had to be reminded of it. See the gospel accounts of the walk to Emmaus, where Jesus was with them, resurrected, explaining everything to them. We've seen Jesus numerous times say that the Son of Man is going to be betrayed, he's going to be put to death, he's going to rise again. He's going to be betrayed, he's going to be mocked. He even adds more detail as he reminds them of it overtly and clearly, as you've seen in these devotions. And yet they still didn't know. They were still aghast. The disciples' lack of belief in the resurrection actually adds to the credibility of the resurrection, because it denounces exactly what the chief priests were conspiring against with Pilate. They said, look, they're going to steal the body. The disciples didn't believe in the resurrection, and that means that they didn't steal the body. They see Jesus resurrected and everything changes, and it is now the year 2023 at this time of filming, because it has been 2022 years since the birth of Jesus. It broke history in half. It's that significant. It's that immense. Here it is, the authoritative Roman seal placed over the tomb of Jesus. There is no greater legal protection in the world at that time. The resurrection is real, my friends.